Hello. I wanted to share another insight that I gained that I think will shed a lot of light on how we can heal and help people that are in um, deeper states of mental illness. And here's what I realized. So, quantum superposition is basically a fundamental concept in quantum mechanics where a system or a particle can exist in multiple places at the same time until it's measured or observed. And then collapses into the one that they're being measured and observed in. So this is like Schrodinger's cat. If the cat's dead because it's in two different states, one's dead, one's alive. So depending on the one in which you observe or measure, is the one that becomes real, or I guess current. So here's what was coming to my mind for me is just like we talk about with trauma, you end up with a false self, another self, other selves, right? Our higher self and their other selves that come from our trauma. And you know when you're triggered, any of the five senses triggers a trauma, you're basically taken back in time to the point at which you experienced and registered that trauma. So let's say I was 6 years old, I'm having the same thoughts, feelings, and sensations as I did when I was 6. So it's like I'm reliving that experience, is how they describe trauma. My conscious mind shuts down, and that's connected to my higher self, but that shuts down, sympathetic tone, fight or flight, and the subconscious takes over. And that trauma that was triggered is now I'm reliving that experience. The trauma is big enough, significant enough, a deep enough sankhara. Then it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like multiple personality disorders, schizophrenia. And now that part of me, just like a being, is like running the show. And I'm stuck in time. And when that trauma occurred, it's like a replaying. They call it it's almost like a dead record player. When it gets triggered, you just keep playing that record. And then something will bring you back, like you cool off, and then that part of you subsides and you're back into the conscious mind connected to the higher self. As soon as you get distracted or triggered by something, again, one of your triggers might arise, and that part of you wakes up, and you're now living that timeline. So you could almost think of it like, and it's really what it feels like, when that gets triggered, you're living in another dimension, another world. It's one of the states. So we live in all of these states at the same time. The more trauma we have, the more fragments we have, the more our energy is split across all of these different timelines. And then when we get triggered, we're actually going, to one of these timelines where we're stuck in time. It's like a stagnation. We're stuck there. Then when, our awareness comes back to another dimension, like the one maybe we're in, I guess what we're in, but let's say another dimension, then that subsides and now you're in this one. And then that can get triggered at any point. So you're moving dimensions essentially, either to unhealthier lower states or healthier higher states. So my higher self is one of these higher states that when I'm conscious, I can connect to. As I become more aware and I clear more of the trauma. So as soon as you become aware of it and you're able to stay calm and equanimous, you can heal the trauma. You collapse that timeline. You become aware of it, you experience it, and then you heal it. You ground it out. You collapse that timeline. And then you get that energy back. That fragment resolves. It comes part of the whole. I become more whole. My higher self becomes more prominent. Each time that I collapse one of these timelines, one of these parallel, dimensions that I'm in, as I heal. Now, this is what I notice when I go deeper into theta state. This is going into a deeper healing state. And the way I would describe it is, I feel like, like in what I experienced in the last ayahuasca journey, where I felt like I was fully embodied. I was experiencing what I describe as unity consciousness. It's a much higher self. There isn't just one higher self. It's like layers of higher selves too, just like lower selves with all the traumas. I can have the most severe trauma takes me to maybe a much lower state, and there I'm like, you know, struggling the most, maybe have the most pain and suffering. As I heal, or as I move to these other dimensions, like in a deeper theta state, I'm moving to a higher dimension. Some of these dimensions, I actually literally describe it as I'm meeting beings from other dimensions that come and speak to me when I'm in those theta states. And so maybe it's like, in those higher states, I can actually heal. And how does that work? So you think about what a therapist does. Co-regulation. Okay, this concept of co-regulation is really powerful. I learned it from Thomas Hubl, really amazing, powerful healer. And what he said is, imagine my son were to come to me and say, Mommy, Mommy, I'm really scared. And I were to say, like, you're fine. There's nothing to be scared of. You're good. What have I done? In that case, I've discounted and dismissed his emotion. He hasn't stopped being scared. He's just not going to tell me he's scared. And another way to respond would be to turn my awareness, my attention to him, and to feel him, if I can. If I have developed enough self-awareness, I can also have empathy. I can feel him. And say, I can feel how scared you are. Come here. And if he feels safe, he can come close to me. He can come. And then he can actually, my nervous system is grounded and calm. His is agitated because he's scared or stressed. So he can actually co-regulate. He can latch into my nervous system. I can help him ground it out. And then we can have a rational conversation about what it is that he's scared about. If you try to do it when someone is triggered and scared, their conscious mind has shut down if they're in a version of fight or flight, a level of sympathetic tone. So they can't have as rational a conversation. It's like that part of them is shut down, the higher mind or the intellect, the conscious mind. So they're having an emotional response, right? It's connected to the right side of the brain and the body, an emotional, sensational response. If you meet them there with your nervous system, a calm nervous system, it allows them to ground that energy, to calm, to come back to center. Then their conscious mind comes back online and they can have a rational conversation with you about what they're scared about and take a look at it. And so what I think might be happening is, that's why I think a therapist or a healer is able to take us to our lower dimensions, our trauma, the timeline with the trauma. But it's almost like they're holding our hand and they're able to bring us back so we don't get stuck there. We don't get caught in that timeline. So when people have psychotic breaks and they get stuck in a particular timeline from a previous trauma, they're not able to come out because it's so powerful and so strong. So what I think what I experienced on the last day of this last journey was, first, on the second day, my higher self took me to a much higher dimension. I went deep into theta state. I felt like I was much more embodied. I was sensing and feeling, and I had all these like intuitive hits I get in those states. And then on the third day of that journey, she took me to one of these much, much lower dimensions where there's really deep trauma, ancestral, collective trauma. And when I went there, I felt like I could get overtaken by the psychosis, by the depression, by the anxiety and the fear. It felt like demons and dragons, like overtaking me. I was feeling like I was going into a mental fog, or I was in so much like pain and so many tears that I felt like I don't know if I can come out of it. And then my higher self, who was right there with me, would remind me, would tap me on my heart, remind me to bring my awareness to my heart, and I was able to then ground it out with the tools that I developed. Heal the trauma, release the dark entity or the trauma from my system, collapse that timeline, heal it, collapse that timeline, get that energy back, become a larger whole, so my higher self becomes even stronger and bigger and more prominent in my system. So what I think you can also do for yourself is be like that therapist or healer, and go with you to a lower dimension and be able to pull you back. It's like a tether. So therapists can do this. So I'm like co-regulating with a higher version of myself so that I can go to this place, heal it, and then come back. And I think this is how we can help people who are having severe mental health or on any level of the spectrum. Like, everyone has trauma, sankharas, habit patterns that come from aversion and craving. Just a question of the degrees at which we have it. And the more we have, and the stronger they are, the more mental illness, the more voices, the more struggle we have in our lives. And when we're able to find people that can ground and have nervous systems we can latch into, so we can actually like join them in their dimension, feel the calm, and then together go to this dimension, collapse it by healing, and then continue the healing process. And as I keep healing and I'm closing these lower timelines, one, I'm gaining more energy, energetically. I'm becoming more whole. My higher self is becoming bigger in my system. And I'm able to access like higher selves, deeper theta states, more superpowers, like healing powers, like insights, scientific discoveries. So I think this actually is a way that we can start to approach, and it's all about where is our awareness and how do we bring it to a place where we can actually start to heal these lower dimensions, these lower timelines. So it's quantum mechanics, quantum physics is now going to be converging with the nature of reality, like the human condition, and how we can help accelerate the path to enlightenment.